Hey guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside the Ring. I'm probably not the face that you're expecting to see today, but Shihan's a little bit busy, so he's asked me to step in. We are born on the same day, so you can think of me as his younger, better looking self. And I'm most definitely going to get punched for that one come Monday.
Probably need to be careful what you're saying, Jordan.
So, you've probably seen these two gentlemen on the end here many times before, as they're our in front of the talent crew, as they like to say. We've got Senpai Old Man Roger Eaglestone.
Hello.
And we've got Sexy Man Senpai Johnny Vagona. But those two aren't our main stars today. Our main star here is young Amish Chopra. And we're going to be talking about how his journey for martial arts has taken him, how he came up from a young little kid in the 9 and 10-year-olds class to our youngest overseas fighter. And we're going to talk about how he's transitioned from that fighting to teaching, as well as what happened with your knee injury. All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Amish? When did you start karate and why did you start karate?
I started karate 2014. I started karate because I was into watching movies a lot, like action movies, and I was also getting picked on at school, so I thought starting karate would be a good way to like protect myself, I guess.
What action movies? I'm curious now. Is it going to be a general Karate Kid kind of thing?
Yeah, Rocky, Karate Kid.
Yeah, Rocky,
Expendables.
Wasn't that the same for you, old man?
Yeah, it was actually. I started watching martial arts movies, but they were like the Chinese movies, Hong Kong movies that were dubbed into English with subtitles, and you could see the lips moving, and then the mouth, and then you heard the voice 5 seconds later.
The best ones, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the same. How old were you when you started? You said 2014, but how old were you?
I was 9.
9. Okay.
9, yeah. That's actually funny when we think about looking at you now, and I know we all would have seen it at this point. There was the photo of us from, I think it was 3 years ago in 2017 when we all went over to Thailand, and there was little Amish. You know, chubby little Amish in the middle of the ring, and look how much you've grown now. Even more so when we compare how you were at 9 years old. You know? And your story about getting picked on, it's pretty much the same for me as well. I was choked out at school. That's why I had started karate as a way to defend myself. So it's a very, well, not so much common way.
Yeah.
But you'll find a lot of people do have that, but there's nothing to be ashamed of it either. You know, everyone has their own journey, and we all start from somewhere, whether it be watching martial arts movies, wanting to defend yourself. How did you start again, John?
Good question. Probably the same thing. Just growing up watching movies and thinking, "Oh, that's pretty cool." I don't remember really getting picked on too much when I was really young. Yeah, probably just the movie thing. Yeah, just wanted to, be able to do those moves and all that sort of thing. So yeah, pretty common.
And because you could do those moves, then you could get the girls.
That's it. Yeah.
Let's keep it PG. Let's keep it PG, yeah. Please, old man. Right. So, 2014, that would have been 6 years ago, 9 and 10 years old. It was quite a while before you started to really compete. What drove you to that point where you wanted to compete and fight?
I just wanted to have a go and see what I can get out of it. Like, I didn't take karate that seriously until I started training, and then I got called up from Shihan to start competing. Then I had to go. Won my first tournament. It was quite nerve-wracking.
As it is, most definitely.
Tournament was at Bendigo. No, not Bendigo.
Lara.
The one in Geelong.
Yeah, Lara, that one.
Yeah.
And that one was a rather interesting one, to be honest. That was the qualifier for the Junior All Japan in 2016. I remember that one very well. We had a very not serious discussion, but we had a discussion with a lot of the instructors about who we wanted to put into this competition, because it was a qualifying event for the Junior All Japan, Junior World Cup. And I don't want to sound rude, but we did mention your name, right? But your fight kind of went unnoticed in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
At that tournament, there were eyes on 4 people in particular. Robbie, mainly because he was the only one there that had been to Japan before. Emma, who was technically amazing and ended up knocking out her fighter, I believe, yes?
Can't remember, to be
Can't remember
honest.
that.
And then the almost rivalry that Jacob and I had at that point. So your fight almost went
Out of the blue.
out of the blue, and it almost went underneath all of those other fights in a sense. That being said, how was it to know that you had technically won a spot to fight in the All Japan?
It was nerve-wracking because I didn't know, because that was my first tournament and I never knew fighting. So I got Xi'an gave me the option to go, but I said no because I didn't want to do bad and like don't disrespect the club and have a bad image on it if I lose. So I decided to wait a year and then compete next year.
And that's a very brave thing and mature thing to do for someone at that age, don't you?
Yeah,
don't you
exactly.
agree?
Most
'Cause-
kids would want to go, yeah, I'm going to Japan, and not think of the outcome. You know, you looked at the long term, and you thought, and not just that, you thought about yourself as well. Another year of training, and you'd feel much more confident and mature in your abilities. Which
And
is
that was a discussion
awesome.
that we all had for a while. Was we all saw there was a big discussion about who was going to go over and fight, and there was discussion about Robbie. That was an immediate yes. There was a discussion about the other guys that went to fight that time as well, myself and Emma. And when it came to you, that's where there were almost differing opinions.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that? Because of how under wraps your fight was, nobody was too sure about what would be the best solution. And to be honest, you brought a lot of respect on yourself when you decided to pull out yourself before a decision had even been made. It was a very mature decision for someone at your age to make. And you went back to training and you trained your ass off for another year in preparation for that tournament. And I remember a lot of that time was actually under myself and Senpai Roger over there, and we drilled you hard for that year. We drilled you hard. You and there was someone else. Do you remember who it was? There was someone else who was training to fight as well.
Maddie, wasn't it?
No, not Maddie. Yes, that was it. Dozer. Young Dozer, young Nathan. Yes, because you were both in the teenage class at that point, and we drilled you boys pretty hard in preparation for that. So let's fast forward. We've gone from 2016 Laro, right, and you did incredibly well there, I must add. Now we fast forward to 2017. It's the qualifying tournament. Now, from memory, the initial qualifying tournament, we couldn't actually get you a suitable matchup.
Yeah.
So that led us to going to Bendigo to prove that you had the medal to make it in Japan. So it's been a year. You've busted your ass for a whole year training. There are two main things I want to ask you at this point. One, what kept you motivated throughout that entire year? Because I can tell you from experience, training for one tournament in particular throughout an entire year isn't an easy thing to do motivation-wise. And two, what are your thoughts going into this tournament? Because I don't want to be rude, but nobody had really seen the 2016 qualifying fight that you had won. So there was still some doubts of, was it a one-off thing? Was it a fluke? It definitely wasn't. I can tell you that now. And these boys will agree watching your fight in Bendigo, it definitely wasn't. But what was your motivation and your thoughts going into this tournament?
Well, my motivation was to like get through, and I wanted to compete like for experience, and like I just wanted to get through. It was like really tempting to go overseas and compete for Australia.
So that was the one where you fought Rob.
Yep.
In Bendigo, yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. I think
You did have a fight before that, though.
Yeah, I won the fight before that.
I think it's just the way the age groups worked out, because it was, I can't remember the age groups, but it's like
14, 16.
Under 14, under 16.
Yeah, so Amish was probably just coming into that age group.
And Robbie was just leaving
where
that age
Rob
group.
was at the top end of it, so that happens.
Yeah, but it happens in Japan.
It happens everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
It happens all the time.
Everyone's been through it. Yeah.
I mean, there was a time where Wolverine Junior and I were put in the same division. You know, it just happens. It just happens because you've got such a big age group. Especially when you get to Japan, where they split them into age groups of 3 years instead of 2 years. You really start to get some size differences. So you did well in Bendigo, and then came the hard point. We kind of threw you into the deep end, into the adults class, and then started the training camp. And boy, that was a brutal training camp. There were even by the standards of Robbie and myself, who had already gone through that same training camp before, that was brutal. That was seriously brutal that second time, and tears were shed by all of us. And especially for you, that being your first fight camp, the rest of us had that experience of both training in squad and doing. The rest of us were fairly high ranked, so we'd already gone through things like the 20-man kumite or the 40-man kumite. So we had experience with really hard pushes up until the big event. But you thrust into the adults class, thrust into squad class, into what I still see as our most brutal training camp yet. How did you deal with that? As a young, 12 years old?
Yeah.
12 years old? As a young 12-year-old, how did you deal with that kind of stress, the emotions that came into that?
Well, I was sort of like doing what everyone else was doing, so I had my motivation to be like you guys, because you guys were at the top, like Jordan, you and Robbie, you guys are at the top of your division. I was like, if I train like yous, I'll be like yous, I'll fight like that, and that will hopefully let me win the tournament in Japan.
That's a good mindset. That's a good mindset. You always look up.
Amish has always shown maturity beyond his years.
Yeah, but jumping into the adults class and you were thrashed night after night, how did you keep coming back to that? Because I know it's hard because like John and I have had years more experience than you, and when we were training for both our Showdown Ho and our Showdown gradings, we'd come in knowing we were going to get literally the crap kicked out of us every night, and it was hard mentally to turn up and give it your best. You don't have half the life experience that John and I have.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that, knowing every time you came in, especially after that dreaded walk back, walk forward, getting the punch the crap out of you, getting kicked, and if there were tears from everybody there that was doing it, how did you get the motivation to come back after that? Because I know a lot of people would have just said, no, I'm not doing this anymore, I can't do it, it's too much.
It makes or breaks you.
Yeah. So how did you get over that? Because I remember you were crying as Shihan was kicking you coming forward, and we were telling you, take bigger steps, don't take smaller steps, get it over with.
It wasn't just him. All of us were in tears, and that is easier said than done when it's not just kick and it's kick and I'm pushing you back at the same time.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. And then there's more to come the next day or the 2 days later. How did you motivate yourself for that? It's easy to say, I want to be the best and I'm going to follow those guys, but
it does get to the point where you kind of go, God, I do not want to turn up, I don't want to go, and you look for an excuse out. So yeah, like Senpai said, how did you what drove you to keep turning up?
You can come up with any excuse you like to not turn up to class.
Yeah.
And it's what clicks over in here. So what was making you keep coming back?
I was just motivated because I already put all the effort in throughout the year, and I was like, I waited a year for this, I might as well give it all I got.
Don't want to waste the previous year.
Yeah, so I came in every day, trained every day, stayed after class to do more skills and all that. And unfortunately I didn't do as good as I thought, but I trained.
You did awesome over there, man.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a learning experience, and apart from the really young guys that we took this last time, anybody in your age group and above, we don't expect them to go over there and win.
Especially not their first time.
Yeah. Not even win a fight, let alone win the division. It's just, and because we were the first regular Europeans going over to Japan to fight, especially Robbie and Jordan, regularly before that, they had to pave the way, and so did you. And they had to prove that you could fight.
Yeah.
And all you had to do was give them just that little ounce of doubt in their mind, and you'd lost the fight, as Robbie found out the first time we went over there. He'd won a fight, didn't stand strong, just let the fight, and that lost him the fight when he should have won it.
Yeah.
And you guys have paved the way, and to be serious, I think you guys paving the way made it a lot easier last time around at the Rookies Cup for our guys.
And that's not to take anything away from those young kids.
No,
they did amazing.
They did an awesome job, but you guys paved the way by doing the hard work.
Both Shihan and Sifu have said it themselves that whenever we go overseas now, the Japanese respect us, and that's because of what I did, what you did, and what Robbie did to pave the way for the younger generation to come up and through. So just going back, we'll get to the tournament.
Yeah.
Going back to the training, that training was brutal. For those of you that don't understand, what Senpai Roger was saying before is when we were training, we would walk from one end of the dojo up and then back, and that entire time we were getting punched and kicked by basically every single person in the room. Once we were back up, the next person would come in. Once we were up, the next person would come in. And Shihan would jump on himself every 3 or 4 rounds. So it was brutal, incredibly brutal. And that doesn't even talk about our training in Thailand. That's a real turning point. And now that you've taken a step back from fighting and start teaching more so, you'll probably agree with us when we say that mental fight that you have where you just don't want to turn up, that's almost necessary when you're training a fighter. Yeah. And you've really got to break the fighter down and build them back up so that when it comes time for them to fight, they have a strong heart and a strong mind, and that's the most important thing. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep, 100%. You got to be mentally tough. You can be as tough as you like physically. Without the mental toughness, you're going to get nowhere.
You've seen it with some of the most talented fighters in the world. You know, they've got all the talent in the world, but no mental toughness, no heart. They lose that first fight, even though their talent has carried them all the way. Even some of the best, boxers in the world, kickboxers in the world, their talent has carried them all the way to the top of the world. They lose one fight, and you never see them again. Because that's a lack of heart, lack of mental toughness, and that's what you show from a very young age, and that's what helped get you through all of those real tough moments in the training. So Thailand now. Before we went to Japan, we had our 2-week training camp in Thailand. So you would have heard the horror stories from both Shihan when he went over at the beginning of 2016 to train for the World Kumite Championships, and you would have heard the stories from myself and Robbie when we went over there the previous year, and now we're doing twice the amount of time training over there. How does this feel for you at that point?
It was quite nerve-wracking at first, but then I sort of got used to it because all I did was just follow you guys, motivated myself to get through this and prepare myself for the big fight I had incoming. Because without the motivation I had, and I was watching a lot of speeches and motivation things to get through all this, so that kept me motivated to get all through my training.
It's pretty daunting the first time you go over there.
It's a completely different world.
Yeah, you're going overseas for the first time. It's freaking hot.
Yeah.
Was that your first time overseas? Ah.
So it's just first of everything. Going overseas, it's hot. You're not in your own bed. You're eating strange food, eating a lot.
Well, in his case, he's drinking more coconuts than anything.
And then knowing that you're going to train with Sifu and Junior.
It wasn't the training with Sifu and Junior we were worried about. It was Matt we were worried about.
So it's just, it's a lot. It's not just you're going to train. It's everything. Yeah. It's a whole new world.
How were you feeling that first time when you're doing that 3 o'clock kickboxing session or Muay Thai session with Mutt, and you got to walk up 5 flights of stairs, you know, and as you're walking up those stairs, there's posters of all the champions, photos of all the champions going up 5 flights of stairs, and you've got to be in your own world, and that's when you've got to zone out and just think about what you've got to do.
Yeah.
But it's a long walk up 5 flights of stairs, thinking, this is my first time here, what's going to happen?
I imagine it's a very daunting experience. Like you said, you looked up to guys like that have already done it before, myself and Robbie, and for the most part, with the exceptions of those real brutal moments like when we're walking up and getting punched and kicked, when it came to things like pad work, Robbie and I were doing pretty well over here, and then we get to Thailand and 2 rounds and Robbie and I are on the floor gasping for air. That would have been a very, very nerve-wracking experience, to say the least. So you're training in Thailand, you got through it by watching those motivational speeches. Physically though, how was it? It would have been a very different experience, I imagine.
Yeah, physically it was like pretty painful because every training session, the boxing ring was like made out of hard mats, and then your feet would get blisters. Everywhere, blisters, bruises. And once you finished training, we went back home to our hotel, had a shower, ate, and it was just the routine that I got into, and then I kind of got used to the training.
Yeah. For people that don't understand, the boxing ring's canvas. It's a hot canvas. So the rounds they do over there are 3-minute rounds. They're not 2-minute
tin
rounds.
Roof as well in Thailand.
Yeah, tin roof. So if it's like 30 degrees outside, you're looking at 42, 45 degrees inside. It gets so hot in there every round or every second round, which is every 3 to 6 minutes. They've got to water the canvas down just to cool it down for the feet. It's that hot there. So, you know, you've also got to put up with the heat, trying to scull back 2-3 litres of water in that hour-and-a-half session.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
And then to know all that, and then you've got to go and shovel food down, like real, and I don't mean that like metaphorically, I mean literally shoveling food down your throat because you are sweating so much that you're just going to keep losing weight, which is something that we don't want to do before a fight for us, and it's something that for someone your age really shouldn't be happening. We've looked at the training, the physical and mental side, the eating part. That would have been really, and I remember that for you. That was a real struggle, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I was getting forced to eat way more calories than I'm used to. Because every training session we finished, we were eating like 1,000 calories each time, and I couldn't do it, so I just started drinking coconuts.
Well, you're lucky because the coconut's got plenty of electrolytes in them. They're good like that, so they could replace a lot of the vitamins and minerals that get sweated out, but you still needed to eat. So in the end, we were stopping you having coconuts.
Yeah.
Until after you'd eaten, then you could have a coconut.
Do you guys remember what our saying that we came up with? How much does a champion eat?
Yeah.
More than the person next to him. And you remember what we did? We set him right between me and Shihan.
Funny, we'd sit there, we'd be like, Amish, you're not going anywhere until you finish that pork neck, and you know, Amish, come on, get into that rice.
Must have felt like you were 3 again.
Yeah,
Amish,
funny.
eat your vegetables.
And what made it even harder was on a Monday and a Wednesday, they would do the hour-and-a-half, 2-hour session there, and then you'd have 2.5 hours to eat, rest, and then go do a karate session for an hour-and-a-half.
And that was hard because
2 days a week you had to back it up 2 hours, 2.5 hours later. And Sifu never took into account that you'd done your kickboxing Muay Thai session before that. No, this is what we're doing. Get it on, get it over. I don't care how tired you are, you're doing this.
And that's a hard thing as well, because 2 hours, you got to leave that hour to digest, but you don't have the time to let your body go into a state where it's comfortable to eat after that Muay Thai session, Yeah, you feel nauseous, you feel like you're going to throw up, and then you've got to go downstairs and you have to eat, because if you don't eat, you're not going to survive the next training session. And if you wait that half an hour until your stomach's ready to eat, you're going to have that food still in your system when it's time to train, then you're going to throw up then. And it was a very, very daunting experience, especially for your first time, to say the least. Now, we finished that training camp in Thailand, thank goodness. I think we were all pretty relieved at that point. Now we're in Japan. First time in Japan, the big city Osaka. Now we've just gone from hot and humid to even hotter and even more humid. And I remember we were out one night. I think this was after the tournament, but it was maybe 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and it was still 35 degrees. That's the kind of weather that we had to deal with that time. So we've fought with the weather trying to get over to and train. Now we've got to deal with this weather when it's time to fight, and this is the big thing that you've been working up towards for not just 1 year but 2 years. You decided to step back in 2016. Well, you trained before that for 2016, and then you decide to step back for the 2016 tournament and just train, further improve yourself, and get yourself ready for the 2017 tournament. And that 2017 tournament was arguably even bigger than the 2016 one. So, how are we feeling going into this tournament?
It was quite nerve-wracking because I got into tears before my fight. Like, I was really nervous because I trained so much for this fight, and I was like, this is it. This is the big moment. And I didn't want to lose, because then I didn't want to upset my dad and myself and my coach Shion. So it was really nerve-wracking. I was crying in tears because I was really nervous for my fight, and then I got motivated by Shion because he taught us a speech before the fight, and then I got into the fight. I fought my first round. I was quite nervous, but as soon as we threw the first punch, my nerves went away, and we started fighting. I was going through the fighting like I usually do. It was a draw, and then we fought again the next round. Extension.
As usual.
Yeah. So it was an extension round. I was fighting normally. I dropped my hands at the end. He gets a head kick and he gets a point, and then I lose the fight.
Well,
It happens.
That's a learning experience.
From everyone. But what you've got to realise is, if it's a draw in Japan, that usually means you should have won.
If it was over here, you would have won.
But they don't want to give it to you, so they're going to make it a draw to see how you go for the next round. And like you said, last second, and it's happened to Senpai Jordan as well in the Thailand 41st anniversary.
Think about that. I got a rolling kick to the head in the last second.
I remember you coming off after that fight. So I remember how nervous you were going into it. Then when you came off, I remember how pumped you were and excited. I remember Shion saying, "How do you feel?" And you were just like,
I'll do it again. I'll just go again.
You were ready to go back in straight away. You were so pumped. That must have been a great feeling.
Yeah.
That is an amazing. It's a euphoric feeling.
Yeah. I mean, you've just lost.
Yeah.
In an extension fight, in an extension round, and came off so happy and pumped, and you were just buzzing. We couldn't hold you down.
We would have thought that you just won the whole damn tournament.
Yeah, and
you were that excited.
You just wanted to do it all over again. That must have been a good feeling.
Yeah, it was good because I was really happy that I got through all this, and I was I want to do it again, redeem myself. Yeah, but unfortunately I injured myself at the end of the year.
So let's talk about that now. Your injury, and that's a very important thing for a lot of fighters, is injuries that keep them out of the fight or just training in general for quite a while. I know, John, you had your back or groin, was it, for a while?
Both, back,
It was mainly the groin though, wasn't it? Back in
2014,
2015. Tell us about that. How was that for you?
That was hard because that was, we were training for our Shodan Ho grading.
Shodan Ho, I think so.
Yeah, I think it was the first one. Yeah, so we just started hitting weights over Christmas, and squatting, did my groin, and then couldn't train for however long.
How was that on?
It was crap because, I'd set myself a time frame that I'm grading here, I'm going to start, pushing myself now.
Yeah.
And when you get a major injury and it's like, damn it, and then you can't do anything for a certain amount of time, it sets you back. And then you've got to play catch up after that.
And that's the hardest.
And then you go into it thinking, if I had that extra time, would I have been better prepared and all that? But it's part of the journey. So how did you come about, with your knee injury?
So when I injured my knee, I had no idea I broke it because I was already gone through a lot of pain, like brutal pain. My body's been through a lot. I was like, it must have been a bruise. I should be fine. So I was walking with a broken knee for 3 weeks. I didn't notice, so like the tendon kept splitting more and more.
So how'd you do it?
We were doing rolls.
The jumping game over the kick shields.
Yeah.
He's the reason why it got banned. Do you know how hard it is to organize a before grading class and not have that take up 30 minutes of my time? It's so difficult. It's all thanks to you and your stupid knee.
But anyway, so you did it rolling.
Yeah, so I was doing diving rolls. I landed with my knee, and I was like to Jordan, my knee really hurts. He was like, you'll be fine. So I was like,
channeling Shihan, you'll be fine. And Sifu, you'll be fine. Walk it off.
Hey, look, if it makes you feel any better,
yeah.
I had a hairline fracture in my leg, and Shihan told me to still go up and keep fighting. So, but your knee, that was a rather painful, I can imagine. But that's almost a scary thing when as a fighter, because we're so used to taking these pounding body blows, these incredible leg kicks. So we're used to all of that pain. So when something's wrong in the body, we as fighters, we tend to downplay that a lot.
Brush it off.
And I think you guys would agree as well. You get some sort of pain somewhere, and you just brush it off as a bruise or a strain, and then it just gets worse and it gets worse, and it just a snowball effect almost,
Try and work around it.
Yeah.
Until it reaches a point where you can't work around it anymore. And I think that's what happened to you, wasn't it? We started to see you have to compromise by doing different activities. We started to see you come in slightly less and less, and then it reached the point where you had to really take time off.
Yeah.
And then, well, before we get into what came next, how did that feel, having to reach that point, both mentally and physically, reaching the point where you kind of are forced to step away from it all?
It was like really hard because I had nothing else to do because most of my life was coming here, training, and I was like begging mom to take me to karate with my broken knee, but she didn't let me.
You had to go and have it operated on, didn't you? So it was like you had absolutely no choice, It's not like it's a 50-50, I can go, I can sort it out. But when you had it operated on, you have no choice. There's that cut-off line, you're not doing anything. You got no choice in the matter.
Yeah. So it was like really hard. The doctors told me a year and a half. I was like, can it be a quicker process? So I just waited the time out. Became really lazy during that time, started playing video games, eating a lot, gained a lot of weight, and then next year, 2019, I came back, started getting back into training.
Like Jordan and I say all the time in class to the kids, you need to look after your body. You need to make sure when you're in stances that front knee's bent, because if you get it injured, it takes a year and a half of your time before you can actually start training again properly.
And I think in terms of the injury, it wasn't so much the physical aspect that was keeping you away. I think it was more the mental aspect and the confidence that you had in your knee. And I think you guys would agree with this as well. When you hurt your groin and your back, it was quite a while before you started doing squats again, wasn't it? Because you weren't too confident about that.
Yeah, you lose confidence in it. Yeah.
And it was the same for me when I nearly broke my shin during a grading. For nearly 3-4 months afterwards, and there's nothing compared to yours, I was scared to kick with it.
Yeah.
When you lose confidence in one of your weapons, it becomes a very daunting thing to get over it. And unfortunately, when it reaches that point, there's not a lot that other people can do to really help. They can encourage you, but it's all really up to you. So how was it, confidence-wise, trying to get your confidence and strength back into that leg? Because I know for a while you really did favour the other leg.
Yeah.
And now you're almost back and you've got full confidence in that knee. But how was it having half confidence and then trying to get back into things?
It was
build
like
that confidence
nerve-wracking
up?
because I didn't want to hurt myself again and go through the same process.
Yep.
So I was like, I better be careful what I do, and I didn't want to like really move with my legs, so I started punching more instead of doing kicks, and then my whole fighting changed, the way I thought of things, and I was like really careful and aware. But I lost my confidence in fighting because I didn't compete for 2 to 3 years now, and then it's really hard to get back into it.
Yeah, we could see like your confidence. You didn't trust your knee, and the knee's a hard thing because like I've torn the meniscus in my knee, and it's all the ligaments are all torn, and it's a scary thing to kick with that bad knee because it can go at any time.
Yeah.
And when you're kicking, you're thinking if it goes, I'm over on my backside because you just can't do anything with it. And we could see it. I mean, you came in, and you started doing your rehab here as well, and you were doing it regularly, but over a period of time that rehab you weren't doing. I was on your case all the time, do your rehab, but you weren't doing it, and I can understand why, because you haven't got the confidence in the knee, it's not working for you, and you're thinking, why bother doing the rehab when I'm doing all this work?
Yeah.
And you haven't got the confidence in your knee, because from the time your knee went to the time I could honestly say that your confidence was back up. That was 1.5 years, maybe a bit longer.
Yeah.
And it took the same for my knee to be able to kick a heavy bag and put everything into it, and not pull back without even thinking about it because you're afraid you're going to hurt it again. And it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Did you get to a point where you regained confidence in the knee? Like, do you remember a point where you thought, it's 100%, like I'm confident with it now, or not really?
Not really.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, because it was a major injury.
Yeah.
So obviously you're always thinking about it, and it's not as strong as it was, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you didn't actually get to a point where you thought, no, you know what, I'm good to go.
Not really.
It just slowly.
I think with all of us, we've all had that some sort of injury, and you'd all agree, there's no set time where you all of a sudden you go, I'm good, I'm really good. It's just sort of...
You just realise that you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, over a period of time, all of a sudden one day you think, I'm not thinking about it. I'm just doing without thinking, but you don't know when that happened. All of a sudden you just think about it.
Yeah.
And you just don't know when it was.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about injuries. You don't want to re-injure yourself,
Yeah.
I know Sensei Tony's always told me, because I've been riddled with injuries, broken ribs, my shin. There was a time where I was having problems with my knee, not to the extent that you had, but I was having problems with that. And you always told me, when you are 70 to 80% better, that's when you are most likely to re-injure yourself and go back to that 40-50% better again, and I think that's where you were at for that long time, was that 70-80% and not wanting to re-injure yourself again. And we've had the best example of re-injuring yourself in Shihan.
Yeah.
Always re-injuring himself by starting things a little bit too early. So we know what it's like to really re-injure yourself and then not be able to. We have to start that whole track of building your confidence back up over and over again. So you've taken a step back from fighting recently, and now you've started teaching.
Yeah.
And for one, I'm actually very, very happy for that. Very glad, very proud, because it's a very easy thing to go and say, cool, I want to go and fight. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely not an easy thing. But then to go and stand in front of a group and teach them yourself, that's probably more daunting than it is to go in and fight. Because you guys would have experienced this as well when you were thrust into teaching. When you're fighting, because you both fought as well, you're nervous as heck, But then you step into the ring, and the first punch, like Amish said, your nerves just melt away because you can't worry about the people around you when you've got someone trying to kick your head off.
Exactly.
You don't have that when you're teaching. You've got 20, 30 people, and all those eyes are on you. And for a lot of people, they don't they don't willingly step into that. They just kind of slowly find themselves being dragged into it by us. But you just sort of came in and just said, I want to teach.
Yeah.
What drove you to that point?
Well, so like since I took the break from fighting, I decided to like give all my skills and knowledge that I learned from fighting to others. But it was hard because I was pretty nervous at first teaching, but then I sort of got used to it. Started teaching little kids, moving on to other classes, starting kickboxing, karate, and that was being my first job. So I decided to start teaching.
I don't think you get to a point where you're like, I've got all these skills.
Yeah.
I can teach now.
Yeah.
I think it's like a slow transition.
Slow.
You know what I mean? And you probably don't realise that everything that you've done in the past, your fight camps, you're fighting overseas. That's they're teachings. It's stuff that you can only learn by doing from experience. So even probably teaching your first class, it's not like all of a sudden I'm a great teacher. It's a slow transition, and you get better and better at it. But you go back to the things that you've done. So that holds you in good stead. All those things that you've done, and it's things that you can't teach.
And not everybody can teach. Let's be serious. There's not a lot of people that can teach, because anybody can fight. Whether you're good at fighting or bad at fighting, everybody can fight. Okay, whether you're just fighting in the dojo or whether you're like you guys going international and fighting, but not everybody can teach. It's a whole different mindset, and there's so many other variables that come into it.
It's a very humbling experience. Wouldn't you agree? It's
Definitely.
To go from that point where you're just being told what to do, and then now you're in the position where it's the roles are reversed and you have to teach someone, tell them what to do, and you realize what kind of role your teacher has had in getting you to where you are. It's a very humbling experience.
And everyone teaches differently as well. We see how Xi'an teaches. We're not going to teach like Xi'an teaches. You teach the way that you teach. Everyone's got their own personality, and the way that they teach something might be different. So, you just do.
You pick from Xi'an, you pick from Sensei Tony, you pick from Senpai Jordan, you pick a little bit from John or myself, and you take what works for you. You mould it into what you want. And you become their teacher, because you can't copy somebody exactly. It's not like fighting where you can copy a kick or a punch. You need to be able to find your groove and how you teach people.
And that's a scary thing, because every teacher, and I think you'll all agree with this, every teacher really agonizes over the path they set for their students. They really agonize over whether this is the right path that they're setting for their students. But as a teacher, it's your job to make sure that you're doing the best you can in the path that you set for them,
Because Jordan and I are a classic example. We both take the teenagers class. It's his class, but I've been there since he's been taking it. And the discussions and arguments we've had over certain students, because he sees it one way, I see it a different way. And it's good. It's a good clash, but it just shows you we're in the same class teaching the same kids, but we see things from a different point. And we've had plenty of arguments or heated debates about the way we should be doing things, or certain students, whether they should be grading, whether they shouldn't be grading, and so forth.
Sometimes we have heated arguments in the middle of the class about how something should be done, much to the laughter of all the other kids in the class.
But it's a matter of at the end of the day, you've got to do what's best for the students, not what's best for your ego. And as a teacher, that's the hardest thing. You've got to put your ego aside and do what's best for the kids or your students. Not all kids, as John knows, there's a big kids.
Big
but
kids,
you've got to put your ego aside and do what's best for them. And sometimes that means stepping back and letting them make a certain mistake so they can learn without hurting themselves.
So doing what you've done in the past now, things that we've spoken about, it also earns you respect that you've done things that other people haven't done.
Yeah.
You know, they're almost like qualifications, or, you know,
Yeah.
boxes that have been ticked. So that must give you confidence when you're, say there's some new kids that are training to fight overseas now. That must give you confidence now to step in and know that you've done it.
Yeah.
And it must be great for them as well to look up to you, knowing that you've done it. You've trained over in Thailand. You've fought in Japan. That's awesome. That's the things that you can't teach. They're things that you've earned.
Yeah.
So that must give you confidence now going forward and teaching and passing on that knowledge. You know?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of kids that look up to you. You might not realize it, but there are a lot of kids. All of those kids that went over to the Rookies Cup, they looked up to every single one of us that went over to Japan and fought. And I know that because I was the one that was put in charge of their training camp, I know that when you came in to help them out during the teens kickboxing class and help get them ready, I appreciated it.
Yeah.
But they especially appreciated it, and that's really the kind of thing that's needed in a teacher. You've got to care for the students, and you care, and that's what's making you a good teacher, and that's what's going to make you a great teacher.
Yep.
When time comes.
And that's something you can't fake, that you care for your students. That they know.
Yeah.
You know, you can't fake that.
Yeah.
You can fake a lot of things. You can fake some knowledge and trying to pass it on until you've sorted it out and
very
figured out how to
easily.
do it. But you can't fake that passion and that caring for your students. They'll know straight away whether you care or not. When we've all had teachers that we know couldn't give two stuffs about how we're going.
Yeah.
And the ones that do, and the ones that you know care about you, you give more to them than...
They're the ones that make a difference, and you see it with the kickboxing kids. I don't see the karate class that you help out with because I'm teaching at the same time myself, but I see it with the kickboxing kids that we teach together. Those kids look up to you, and it's because you care for them. And that class has been growing in size, and that's a no small feat because of what you've been doing for those kids.
And I appreciate it when you come and help me with the karate class, because I know I don't have to. It comes instinctively to you. I know I don't have to tell you what I want you to do with the kids. You're already doing it without me telling you, which is really, really good. I might be doing something, but instinctively you're going around doing what I would be doing if Shihan was out the front and I'm, doing it. You're just doing it straight away without me having to tell you, and that takes a special kind of person.
So how have you found 2020? Obviously, not being able to train, or disruptions, and
my goal this year was to start competing again because I had my confidence up, but obviously that can't happen now. So now I've just been training again with weights, just trying to regain my fitness and train next year, hopefully, unless this virus goes away.
Yes. We noticed you've been smashing the weights this year, putting on some gains.
Get rid of that chubby little gut you had 3 years ago.
Obviously going through some changes. You look like you're really enjoying your weight sessions now. You're pretty strict with them, and that's good. So you're enjoying that side of things?
Yeah, just trying to build a physique for fighting now. So trying to get my strength back in my body.
Do you plan to fight overseas again?
Hopefully, after I finish school, I want to start fighting overseas again. But my main priority now is to finish school and then go back into fighting.
That's just as important.
But you'll hopefully fight in Australia before then?
Yeah, I'll start doing local tournaments once they start
coming back up, once all of this pandemic goes away.
I think it's an incredible thing for someone to take a step back from fighting and become a teacher. I know that Sifu has said it before, Shihan said it before, but when it comes to do we want fighters or do we want teachers? We want teachers. We want teachers because what does a fighter give us? They give us championships. They give us overseas trips to go and fight. Prestige. What does a teacher give us? A teacher gives us a whole bunch of kids. We give those kids to the teacher to teach, and from that group, we could have another fighter. We could have another teacher who could breed their own new set of teachers and fighters. So And especially for someone who has had that experience fighting overseas, because we've got many teachers who don't have that experience fighting overseas. You'll probably find that you'll have a lot of those kids following the same path as you, simply because they want to be like you. You know, the amount of kids that we had in the teenagers class alone that wanted to go overseas and fight in Japan because they just wanted to follow along what I was doing, their teacher. How many did we had? 3 of them, wasn't it?
At least.
Yeah. Three that went, but I know of at least 6 that wanted to go.
Yeah.
So it will happen eventually. Trust me, it most definitely will.
And a teacher's more important because you can teach till you're 70. You look at Sifu. Yeah, look at
50 million years old.
You look at Sifu, and he's teaching now. A fighter's only got a limited span of fighting, and it can stop just like that with an injury. But you can teach all the time. I mean, take a look at Senpai Mick. He's a classic example.
Yeah.
He can't do a lot of what he wants to teach, but he's clever enough to be able to teach it, and then to get a student out to demonstrate it that he knows can do it, and teach that student at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, so you might not be able to do everything, but as a teacher, you can teach for a long, long time. Fighters only have limited
some of the best
lifespan.
coaches in the world can't fight. You know, some of the greatest coaches of the greatest fighters to live can't fight. Never fought, can't fight to save their lives. Look at Mike Tyson's trainer, for example. Never fought.
Gus DiMario, yeah.
But built up a beast of a fighter.
And it wasn't just Mike Tyson, he totally fought a lot, because it takes a special eye to be able to be a trainer and teacher, to be able to see where someone is strong, see where they're weak, and then not just be able to see it, but then teach them that without making them feel like they're something less of a fighter because they're weak in this area.
Yeah.
Looks like we're trying to talk you out of fighting, Amish, or not.
No, I want to see Amish fight overseas again. I want to see him fight overseas, but in all honesty, my friend, watching you over the last year and a half, from when you first started teaching to where it's been a privilege, man. You've grown so much, and like we say, you can teach forever. You can't fight forever. You know, you're lucky that injury didn't stop you from fighting, but it could have easily stopped your fight career. But your teaching career can go on for a long time.
Yeah.
And people will respect teachers just as much as they do fighters. You know, they won't think anything less of a teacher just because they can't fight. Yeah.
For us guys that have been around forever, watching, you know, we've seen, you know, kids start from here and grow, you know, and you're one of those kids that probably went unnoticed and then slowly started building. You know, we came back to train this year for a little bit, and then we couldn't train again.
And then train for a little bit.
You could train for a little bit and couldn't train again. But in that time back this year, you were earmarked to grade at the next grading to first Q. Yeah, correct. Which is a massive grading. Unfortunately, the way the year's going, who knows when that's going to happen? But there's another goal for you. For us guys. You know, seeing you get to that level, that's awesome for us. Like,
it is,
I love it. That's great. Because we've seen you grow so much over the years, and now getting to, you know, your top end of gradings now. That must give you, you know, another goal to set your sights on.
Yeah. So fighting 20 rounds, it's going to be nerve-wracking, but I guess have to wait for it when the time comes.
And training obviously will step up leading into that, which you know about.
And we know you'll smash it, man. You'll smash it when the time comes.
I remember when we first met. You know, you're 9 years old, and I was just assisting your class that you were in. Do you remember our little promise that we made when you turned 16? Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you remember. I would have been disappointed if it was only me.
What was that?
When I saw Amish for the first time, I watched him train. I watched him do some sparring, and I looked at this kid and I thought, right, this kid's something. And I told him, I asked him how old he was, 9 years old, and I said, right, cool. when you're 16 years old, you better be able to beat the crap out of me.
Oh well.
So, you've got until December, and I didn't say that I didn't say that just out of the blue. I said that because I saw something in you. Clearly, I saw something in you. If you're still here now, but it was this that I saw, heart. And for a kid so small at that time, you're at a heart bigger than most of the adults in the adults class I'd seen at that time. You know, and that strength of heart would have been the thing that helped you get through, well, everything at this point. You haven't had an easy time as a martial artist. You know, fight camp, injury, starting to teach, even as much of a shy person as you naturally are, standing in front of a class and teaching. It's been very nerve-wracking from the start to the present.
Yeah.
And none of that would have been possible if it wasn't for the heart that you show and the heart that you have. And know that the strength of heart will get you through the toughest of trials. Know that. And you've got more than enough to help you out. So, I think we'll finish off. There's anything you guys want to add to that before we finish off?
I think we've said it all. You know, you're a great kid, and you know you're a massive part of this club, and we've loved watching you grow. And you've still got so much growth in front of you, and it's probably why we hang around to watch it all. Yeah. We've got nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. As you get older, and Jordan doesn't know this yet, but as you get older,
I'm an old man, thank you very much.
And you have to leave certain parts of your martial arts career behind. Like John and I don't fight no more. You know, it's people like you and Jordan and Robbie that we look forward to. You know. So you know, it's a honour and a privilege to watch you grow the last few years, and I can't wait to see what happens over the next 3 or 4 years. I can't wait till you have to do your 50-man showdown, hoe grading, and we can beat the living out of you. But we do it because we love you.
Oh, so thanks for joining us, you two. Thanks for coming down, Amish. Our wonderful cameraman who's usually behind the scenes. We've dragged him in front to talk about your journey, and it has been a very interesting one, and I think you'll find that it's a very empowering one for a lot of people, a lot of young kids that are probably thinking the same way that you are, wanting to look up to those fighters like us, like you now, and want to go overseas when that time comes eventually, and want to fight. And for a lot of us, your story of your injury and overcoming that injury and regaining your confidence, that's a very relatable story. It's a very difficult thing for everyone. So knowing that you're able to get through that, it's very, very empowering. So like they said, it's been a privilege and honor looking at your journey so far, and we can't wait to see what the future brings for you. It's going to be a very bright one for you, young man. So thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Os.